The crowd came expecting a legend. What they witnessed was something far more unforgettable. Because on June 26, 1977, inside a packed arena in Indianapolis, Elvis Presley walked onto a stage carrying a secret his smile could no longer hide. And before the night was over, 18,000 people would watch the strongest man in the room begin to break apart. Backstage, nobody said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The air inside Market Square Arena seemed strangely heavy, almost electric. Outside, thousands of fans filled every seat, laughing, cheering, waving signs, reliving memories from a lifetime spent loving the king of rock and roll. Inside the corridors behind the curtain, the mood was completely different. Silent, uneasy, like a storm waiting for permission to arrive. Elvis stood alone near a dressing room mirror. The white jumpsuit was perfect. The jewelry sparkled. The image was still there, but the man beneath it looked exhausted. His breathing came harder than usual. A bead of sweat rolled down his neck despite the cool air. He wiped it away with a lace handkerchief and stared at his reflection. For a moment, he barely recognized the face looking back. The world still saw Elvis Presley. He saw a man fighting to stay upright. Charlie Hodge noticed it immediately. He had spent years beside Elvis, long enough to recognize the signs nobody else could see. The slowed movements, the distant eyes, the forced smile, the pauses between breaths. Charlie wanted to say something, wanted to tell him to rest, wanted to stop the show entirely. But how do you stop a man who has spent his entire life refusing to quit? A stagehand appeared. 5 minutes. The words echoed down the hallway. Elvis nodded, nothing more. Nearby, Lisa Marie sat on a metal equipment case. Her small legs swung back and forth. She watched her father carefully. Children notice things adults miss. They hear truths hidden between words. And tonight, something felt wrong. Very wrong. Elvis turned and caught her staring. For a brief second, his tired face softened. A real smile appeared. Small, fragile, almost heartbreaking. "You okay, Daddy?" she asked. The question landed harder than anyone realized. Elvis froze. Only for a second. Then he nodded. "Of course, baby." But his voice sounded different. Even Lisa noticed. It lacked certainty. It lacked strength. It sounded like someone trying to convince himself. The arena erupted suddenly. The opening act had finished. Thousands of people began chanting, "Elvis! Elvis! Elvis!" The sound rolled through the walls like thunder. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Camera flashes exploded beyond the curtain. Charlie glanced toward the entrance. Showtime. The moment had arrived. Elvis inhaled slowly. Then again. Then one more time. Almost as if he needed extra courage just to take the next step. Nobody noticed except Lisa. Her eyes followed him. Every movement, every breath, every hesitation. "Daddy?" Elvis looked back. The noise outside faded. The screaming fans disappeared. For one tiny moment there was only a father and daughter. His eyes met hers. And something passed between them, something impossible to explain. A sadness, a fatigue, a quiet fear. The kind adults spend years trying to hide from children. "I'll be okay, honey." The words sounded softer this time, almost like a promise, or maybe a prayer. Then the announcer's voice exploded through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen!" The crowd erupted instantly. The building shook. "Elvis Presley!" The arena detonated with applause. Thousands jumped to their feet. People screamed. People cried. People reached toward the stage before he even appeared. And then he stepped into the light. The roar became deafening. For a moment, it looked like every other Elvis concert. The smile, the wave, the confidence, the charisma, the legend. But up close, something felt off. The smile lingered too long. The eyes looked tired. The shoulders hung lower than usual. The famous energy wasn't gone, but it was flickering, like a candle fighting wind. The band launched into the opening number. The audience sang along. Elvis raised the microphone and began. The crowd cheered immediately, yet something felt different. The voice was there, but the power wasn't, not completely. The notes arrived slightly weaker. His breathing came sooner. His movements seemed slower. Most fans didn't notice. They didn't want to. When people love a legend, they often refuse to see cracks. But the people closest to him saw everything. Charlie saw it, the band saw it, the backup singers saw it, and Lisa Marie saw it most of all. From the wings, she gripped the railing tightly, her small fingers wrapped around the cold metal. She couldn't explain why. She only knew she felt afraid. Elvis moved through song after song. The audience roared after every performance, yet each applause break seemed to cost him more energy, more breath, more strength, more of whatever he had left. Charlie handed him water. Elvis barely touched it. A fan in the third row leaned toward her husband. "He doesn't look right." The husband frowned, then looked again, and suddenly couldn't ignore it either. The king looked tired. Not normal tired, not tour tired. Something deeper, something heavier, something painful. Backstage, tension spread quietly. Nobody spoke about it. Nobody wanted to be the first. But every musician on stage felt the same thing. Elvis was fighting, and whatever he was fighting, he was losing ground. The concert continued. The lights flashed, the crowd screamed, the music played. But underneath everything, another story was unfolding. A hidden story, a dangerous story, one that only a handful of people could see. Elvis finished another song. The applause thundered across the arena. He wiped sweat from his forehead. His breathing sounded louder now. Charlie noticed. The drummer noticed. Even the backup singers exchanged nervous glances. Then, something unexpected happened. The next song should have started immediately. It didn't. Elvis stood completely still, frozen beneath the spotlight. The crowd kept cheering, but he wasn't listening. His eyes stared into the darkness beyond the lights, far away, lost, as if hearing something nobody else could hear. The musicians waited. The conductor waited. The audience slowly quieted. Seconds stretched. Something felt wrong. Then Elvis lifted the microphone, very slowly, and spoke. "Let's do a gospel medley." The band froze. Charlie looked up immediately. That wasn't the plan. That wasn't rehearsed. That wasn't on the set list. A ripple of uncertainty spread across the stage. Nobody argued. Nobody dared. Because everyone knew one thing. Gospel wasn't just music to Elvis. It was where he exposed his soul. It was where the mask disappeared. It was where the real man lived. And tonight, the real man looked dangerously close to breaking. The pianist placed trembling fingers on the keys. A soft chord floated into the arena. The lights dimmed. The atmosphere changed instantly. The crowd sensed it. Thousands of people grew quiet, without understanding why. The spotlight narrowed around Elvis, a lonely halo in the darkness. Lisa leaned forward, her heart pounded. Something inside her whispered a warning she couldn't explain. Elvis closed his eyes, raised the microphone, and took a breath. A long one, a difficult one, the kind of breath taken before carrying something impossibly heavy. The piano began. The audience fell silent. 18,000 people, one heartbeat, one moment, one man. Then Elvis opened his mouth to sing, and the first note emerged. Weak, fragile, shaking, like a rope stretched too tight. The backup singers exchanged a glance. Charlie stiffened. Lisa's stomach dropped. Something was terribly wrong. Elvis tried again. The second line came out stronger. For a second. Only a second. Then the voice trembled. The note cracked. A tiny fracture. Barely noticeable. But enough. Enough to send fear through everyone closest to him. Enough to make Lisa grip the railing harder. Enough to make Charlie take a step forward. Enough to begin the moment that would change everything. And before anyone could understand what was happening, Elvis took another breath, raised the microphone, and prepared to sing again. The next note would determine whether the king could keep standing, or whether the entire world was about to witness something no one ever imagined possible. The second crack was louder. This time, nobody could pretend it hadn't happened. The note shattered in midair and died before reaching the back rows. A chill swept through Market Square Arena. 18,000 people sat frozen beneath the lights. No cheering, no applause, no movement, only silence. The dangerous kind. The kind that arrives when thousands of strangers suddenly realize they are witnessing something real, something unscripted, something that was never supposed to happen. Elvis stood beneath the spotlight, alone. His fingers tightened around the microphone stand. The metal trembled. So did his hands. Sweat glistened across his forehead. His chest rose sharply, then fell, then rose again. Each breath looked harder than the last. The piano continued softly beneath him, trying to catch him, trying to hold him up, trying to save the song. But the song was no longer the problem. The man singing it was. From the wings, Lisa Marie felt panic spreading through her body, a cold feeling. A feeling she had never experienced before. Children often believe their parents are indestructible. That night, for the first time, she saw the opposite. Her father looked fragile, human, small. The realization terrified her. The crowd noticed it too. Rows of fans leaned forward. Some lowered their cameras. Others stopped blinking entirely. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Yet many secretly wished they weren't seeing it at all. Because legends aren't supposed to break. Legends aren't supposed to struggle. Legends aren't supposed to look afraid. But Elvis looked afraid. And that frightened everyone. Charlie Hodge took another step toward him, concern now visible on his face, no longer hidden, no longer controlled. The musicians exchanged nervous glances. The sweet inspiration stood perfectly still. Even the drummer sat frozen behind his kit, waiting, watching, praying. Elvis lowered his head. His eyes disappeared beneath the shadow of the spotlight. For several seconds, he said nothing. The microphone hung loosely in his hand. The arena held its breath. Then his shoulders moved, a small shake, almost invisible. But enough. Enough to tell everyone he was fighting something far bigger than a missed note. A woman in the front row pressed both hands against her mouth. Tears appeared in her eyes. She didn't know why. Maybe because for the first time, she wasn't looking at Elvis Presley. She was looking at a man carrying too much weight. A man running out of strength. A man desperately trying not to fall. The piano softened further. The notes became gentler, warmer, as though the music itself understood what was happening. Elvis slowly raised his face. The crowd gasped. His eyes were wet. Not stage tears, not performance tears, real tears, raw tears. the kind people spend their entire lives trying to hide from strangers. For decades, audiences had watched Elvis command stages around the world. Tonight, they were watching him fight himself, and he was losing. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The microphone captured only a broken inhale. The sound echoed through the speakers, tiny, fragile, heartbreaking. A wave of emotion moved across the audience. Someone whispered, "Dear God." Another person began crying. Several fans lowered their heads, unable to watch, unable to look away. Lisa gripped the railing harder. Her heart hammered so violently she could hear it. "Daddy." The word barely left her lips, but it carried all the fear in her chest. Elvis tried again. He forced air into his lungs, forced strength into his body, forced determination into muscles that no longer wanted to cooperate. For one brief moment, it looked like he might recover. The audience leaned forward. Hope returned. Tiny, fragile, dangerous. Then his hand slipped. The microphone stand lurched sideways. Metal struck the stage floor. Clang! The sound exploded through the silent arena. A collective gasp followed immediately, thousands reacting as one. Elvis stumbled backward. His heel struck the piano bench. His balance disappeared. His arm shot toward the piano. Catching himself at the last second, the crowd froze. Charlie rushed forward. The musicians half rose from their positions. Security moved instinctively. Nobody knew whether to intervene. Nobody knew whether they should. Because the moment had become bigger than the concert. Much bigger. Elvis remained leaning against the piano, head lowered, breathing heavily, his shoulders trembling. The spotlight exposed everything. The sweat, the exhaustion, the vulnerability, the truth. For years the world had seen a king. Tonight they saw a man. And somehow that was even more powerful. Charlie stopped a few feet away, waiting for permission, waiting for a signal, waiting for anything. Elvis slowly lifted one hand. A tiny gesture. "Not now, please." Charlie nodded reluctantly, stepping back. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Then something happened nobody expected. Elvis whispered, so softly that most people never heard it. One word, one name. Lisa. The microphone barely caught it, but Lisa heard every syllable. Time stopped. Her stomach dropped. Her breath vanished. Her father wasn't calling to the audience, wasn't calling to security, wasn't calling to the band. He was calling to her, a 9-year-old girl. Suddenly the giant arena disappeared. The screaming fans disappeared. The cameras disappeared. Everything disappeared. There was only one thing left. Her father needed her. Fear battled with instinct. Instinct won. Lisa stepped forward. A security guard immediately moved in front of her, blocking the path, protecting the stage, protecting Elvis. But he didn't understand. Nobody did. They thought they were stopping a child. They were actually stopping the only person Elvis wanted beside him. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked. The guard hesitated. Elvis lifted his head again. His eyes searched the darkness, searching for her, searching desperately. Then came the words that shattered every remaining illusion. "I can't." The phrase collapsed halfway through, broken, trembling, painfully human. The arena erupted into shocked whispers. Fans stared at each other. Disbelief spread across thousands of faces. Did he really say that? Did the king really admit defeat? The answers stood beneath the spotlight, breathing heavily, shaking visibly, unable to hide anymore. The strongest man in the room had finally reached his limit, and everyone knew it. Lisa felt tears fill her eyes. Something inside her refused to stay still, refused to watch, refused to wait. She pushed past the guard. This time he didn't stop her. Nobody did. Because everyone finally understood. This wasn't a performer struggling through a song. This was a father falling apart, and a daughter trying to reach him before he hit the ground. One step, then another, then another. Lisa started moving toward the stage. The audience noticed. Heads turned, whispers spread. A ripple moved through the arena. Elvis saw her, even through the lights, even through the tears, even through the exhaustion. He saw her. For the first time all night, something changed in his face. A tiny smile appeared, weak, shaking, but real. Hope. The smallest spark of hope. Lisa moved faster. Her eyes never left him. The distance between them shrank. 20 feet. 15. 10. The entire arena watched. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Nobody wanted to interrupt what was unfolding. Because somehow everyone understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. Not a concert, not a performance, not entertainment. Something deeper, something unforgettable. Elvis tightened his grip on the piano. His knees weakened again. The microphone shook violently. The spotlight seemed brighter now, harsher, exposing every crack, every weakness, every ounce of pain. Lisa kept running, closer, closer, closer. Then Elvis whispered again, barely audible, a plea, a father's plea. "Come on, baby." His voice trembled. "Help me." And at that exact moment, his knees began to buckle. The moment Elvis whispered, "Help me," time seemed to stop. Not slow down, stop. 18,000 people sat frozen beneath the lights, trapped inside a moment so fragile that even breathing felt dangerous. Then his knees gave way. The crowd gasped. A sharp sound ripped through the arena, the kind of sound that comes from thousands of hearts breaking at the same time. Elvis lurched forward. The microphone slipped lower. His hand lost strength. The piano bench caught part of his weight, but not enough. For one terrifying second, it looked as if the king of rock and roll would collapse in front of the entire world. Then Lisa reached him, her small arms wrapped around him instinctively. No hesitation, no fear, no concern for the cameras, no concern for the crowd, only love. Pure love. The microphone hung between them. Elvis lowered his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, his body trembled. The entire arena disappeared. No stage, no lights, no screaming fans, only a father and a daughter. For years, Elvis had carried the expectations of millions. For years, he had stood beneath spotlights larger than life. For years, he had been a symbol, a legend, an icon, a king. But now, he was simply a tired father trying not to fall apart. And somehow, that truth was more powerful than every song he had ever sung. Lisa held him tighter. "Daddy." Her voice was barely a whisper, yet somehow it carried through the silence. "Please, stop." The words pierced deeper than applause ever could. Elvis's shoulders shook. A tear rolled down his cheek. Then another, and another. The audience watched in stunned silence. Many were crying openly now. Women wiped their eyes. Men stared at the floor. Strangers reached for each other's hands. Nobody had expected this. Nobody came for this. Yet nobody could look away. Because they were witnessing something far more important than music. They were witnessing humanity. Charlie Hodge stood nearby, motionless. His eyes glistened. Even he understood this moment didn't belong to the band, didn't belong to management, didn't belong to security. This belonged to them, father and daughter. The sweet inspirations lowered their heads. The pianist continued softly. Gentle notes floated through the arena like distant prayers. Elvis took a shaky breath, then another, and another. Slowly, the panic began to loosen its grip. Lisa never moved, never stepped away, never stopped holding him, as if she understood that letting go too soon might cause everything to collapse again. Then something remarkable happened. The trembling in Elvis's hands began to fade. Not completely, but enough. Enough for hope to return. Enough for 18,000 people to feel it. Elvis opened his eyes. His gaze found Lisa's. For several seconds, neither spoke. They didn't need to. Some conversations happen without words. Some love speaks louder in silence. Then Elvis nodded slightly. A silent thank you. A silent, I need you. A silent, I love you. Lisa smiled through tears. A tiny smile, yet somehow stronger than everything around her. Stronger than fame. Stronger than fear. Stronger than the collapse that had nearly consumed him. Elvis slowly reached for the microphone again. The crowd watched in disbelief. Could he continue? Should he continue? Nobody knew. The arena held its breath. Elvis lifted the microphone. The piano waited. The band waited. The world waited. Then he sang. The voice that emerged wasn't the voice fans remembered from the records. It wasn't the thunderous voice that once shook arenas. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't powerful. It wasn't invincible. It was something else, something rarer, something real. Every note carried pain. Every word carried truth. Every breath carried survival. And somehow, that made it beautiful. The audience began crying openly, not because Elvis was strong, not because Elvis was flawless, but because he wasn't. For the first time, they weren't watching a legend perform. They were watching a human being stand back up. And that meant more, far more. The gospel song continued. The sweet inspirations joined softly. The piano wrapped around the melody. The band followed carefully. Nobody rushed. Nobody forced anything. The music seemed to cradle him, supporting him, helping him reach the finish line. Lisa remained beside him, her small hand resting against his arm, his anchor, his strength, his reason to keep going. The final verse arrived, the final words, the final test. Elvis closed his eyes, pulled in one last breath, and sang. The note wavered. For a terrifying moment, it looked ready to break. Then it steadied. The sound floated across the arena, not loud, not dramatic, but honest, painfully honest. The final note lingered in the air, then faded. Silence followed, a sacred silence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. For several seconds, the arena seemed frozen in time. Then, it happened. The crowd erupted, not with excitement, not with celebration, with emotion. Thousands rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the building. Tears mixed with smiles. Cheers mixed with sobs. People weren't applauding a performance. They were applauding courage. They were applauding love. They were applauding a man who had stood at the edge and somehow found a way back. Elvis looked out across the audience. His eyes were still wet, his face still exhausted. But something had changed. The loneliness was gone. Lisa squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. The roar continued, wave after wave, minute after minute. The audience refusing to let the moment end. Eventually, Elvis lifted one hand. A small wave. Nothing dramatic. Yet somehow it carried more meaning than any grand gesture, because everyone understood what they had witnessed. Not perfection, not greatness, not fame. Something better. Truth. Years later, people would remember that night differently. Some would remember the silence. Others would remember the tears. Many would remember the moment Lisa ran toward the stage. But most of all, they would remember the lesson hidden inside it. Even the strongest people break. Even legends become vulnerable. Even kings need help. And sometimes the person who saves you isn't a hero, isn't a doctor, isn't a bodyguard. Sometimes it's simply someone who loves you enough to run toward you when everyone else stands still. The lights eventually dimmed. The concert eventually ended. The crowd eventually went home. But the memory remained. A father, a daughter, a broken moment, a final song, and a reminder that behind every legend is a human heart capable of hurting, fearing, falling, and being saved. That night, 18,000 people arrived to watch Elvis Presley. Instead, they witnessed something far more unforgettable. They witnessed love carrying a man back from the edge. And that is why the story never truly faded.